when we look at the first reading from the book of Judges, I am a little perplexed as to why the compilers of the lectionary chose the particular readings they did. There are some rather interesting readings in the book of Judges that they kind of skip over, which I think would be good for us to hear. And then we get this one, like about Jephthah, and it's saying, okay, I'm not sure why we chose to put this in here, but okay, it's in the Bible, so it's certainly something to ponder. And certainly we look at what happened with Jephthah, and he makes this vow to the Lord. But just because he was used by the Lord as a judge, as someone to liberate Israel, doesn't mean that he had it all together and he knew all of God's heart and mind. We know certainly from what happened with Abraham and Isaac that it is not God's desire or plan for human sacrifice. And we know later the prophets make that clear. But this was a time before the prophets. This was a time before the kings that would then do things and kind of lead the people. And here we have, as we hear throughout the book of Judges, and people did whatever they thought was best. And there's a whole lot of mess in the book of Judges. As I said the other day, it's an amazing thing that the people of Israel don't try to candy coat their history and say, well, but this was a good thing, or they skip over the bad things. They're very honest with the struggles and the problems that they have. We look and we say, when the Lord invites us to follow him, he doesn't want us to bargain with him saying, well, if you do this for me, Lord, then I will surrender or sacrifice this. Because maybe the Lord wants us to do the thing he wants us to do, but he doesn't want us to then, for instance, sacrifice a human being. So we have to be very careful and say, okay, what is God's will here? And say, I'm not going to try to bargain with God, but rather, here I am, Lord. I come to do your will. Here I am, Lord. I come to do your will. In the gospel today, we hear this parable that Jesus shares saying, make sure you come to the feast. The Lord invites in this story, this king invites so many to this wedding banquet, and they refuse. Some ignore the invitation. I got better things to do. But others, they mistreat or kill the messengers, which we understand to be the prophets. And then he says, call everyone in. And the Lord invites us in, the bad and the good alike. But it's interesting, we find that he finds this man not dressed in a wedding garment. And, when I was growing up, I always thought, well, when would he have had time to go home and get a wedding garment? He was pulled off the street to come into here. But then we can look at another question and say, well, where did everybody else get their wedding garments? If he was calling people off the street, where did they? The wedding garments must have been provided. They must have been given because they weren't expecting to go to a wedding feast, and yet they must have been provided. And this man, when asked where his wedding garment was, he was reduced to silence. Why? The only thing I can imagine that he must have refused to put the wedding garment on. And the Lord invites us all to his wedding feast. And the summary of the Bible is God wants to marry us, right? That's the whole history of Israel. All this is about God coming after us and saying, I want you to be with me for eternity. But if we refuse his grace, it says you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be have everything together in order to come to me. But you do have to be open to my grace. You do have to say, Lord, change my heart. Lord, clothe me in this wedding garment. And this man refuses. And so he is rejected from the wedding feast. And the Lord invites us to examine our lives today. What are the areas of our lives? What are the areas of our lives where we don't say, "Here I am, Lord, I come to do your will"? What are the areas of our lives where we reject the wedding garment, the mercy, the grace that God wants to give us? Instead of saying, "God, here, I know I'm broken, I know I'm weak. Pour down your grace upon me. Wash me clean in your mercy."